Bill 204, the Provincial Municipal Tax Sharing Act. So at this point, Mr. Speaker, I would like to move second reading of Bill 204 and offer a few comments in support of it. Mr. Speaker, I live in a city, like almost 80% of the people who live in Alberta do. And for some time I've noticed my city struggling with having enough money to provide the basic services that I, as a citizen, expect them to provide. And at the same time that I'm watching my city struggling, I was, until a few short months ago, watching the province rolling in double-digit surpluses. And to me, this was an inequity that should not be. There is only one taxpayer. We should be able to work this out. So I started looking for some possible solutions for how we could have some sort of a revenue sharing process between the provincial government and the municipalities. And first of all, the question is, well, was there a problem? And yes, definitely, in the reading that I did, there's clearly a problem. And frankly, I could see the problem as I walked down the street. I could see it, as I read the letters to the editor about people unhappy with the litter pickup in their city, or the amount of times that their road got plowed in the wintertime. And I was also able to read it in a number of different articles and commentary. I read through the AUMA resolutions, I read through AAMD&C, and certainly there was lots of commentary in there about financing. And also in Canada West. And the Canada West did a very good report, which I would recommend to people: Delivering the Goods, Infrastructure and Alternative Revenue Sources for the City of Edmonton. And it was released in June of 2008. So, yes, there was a problem. Others had identified it. Okay. So, two, was there a provincial role in this? Would something the province did or was capable of doing, legally had access to, could that address this issue? And clearly, the answer to that question is also yes. Essentially, we have a constitutional setup where we have a federal government and a provincial government, and they divide up in the Constitution who is responsible for what. And that same Constitution also sets out that provinces create the municipalities under them. So, one, yes, the province is responsible for creating the municipalities and the laws that go around them, and indeed we just debated second reading of Bill 203, which talked about election financing for municipal elections. When I looked at alternative revenue options for the province to share some revenue with the municipalities, or for the municipalities to be granted by the province additional revenue generation, a number of things were suggested. And they fall into a couple of general categories. And again, I will encourage people to read the Canada West document. There's things like visitor-specific selective taxes. And that essentially is things like lodging and accommodation taxes, restaurant taxes, pub taxes, beverage taxes, gambling tax, etc. There's also vehicle-specific selective sales taxes, where we get into things like local option fuel tax, or local vehicle registration tax, car rental tax, local tax on parking, vehicle ownership or a wheel tax, sales on special taxes on vehicle sales, etc. There's quite a long list that appears on page 31 of that document. But there's also, and I was quite interested in a third possibility, which was called SPLOST, which is a rather unattractive name, but some interesting ideas. And that was essentially called a penny tax, but it was to fund infrastructure. And I was really captured by what I was hearing from municipal councillors throughout Alberta, but also others, that really what we were dealing with here was an operating gap, and that's what I chose to try and address. So what I've ended up with is what you see before you as proposed in Bill 204, which is about indexing grants to provincial income. Now, Mr. Speaker, people that are following along with this particular debate may not be aware that private members get their placement in the bill draw literally by having their name drawn out of a hat. And you've got to be having the blessings upon you to have a good bill draw. And so this is my 13th spring session. I have had exactly one other good bill draw. And in those days in my caucus, it was traditional if you had an excellent bill draw, the best one actually, you handed it over to the leader who got that position. And in fact, that's what I did. And I got punted to the back of the bus with some number that's so high I didn't even get the bill printed. So it was, I was pretty excited when I was going to get an opportunity this year. And in fact, I drew Bill 201, and I exchanged places with my colleague because we felt that that was a very timely bill and something that he really wanted to bring up. So I am still pleased to have position Bill 204. And to be able to bring forward and encourage my colleagues in the Assembly to have a good debate about municipal financing. So we've talked about, is it necessary? Yes. Can the province do this? Yes. What was really needed? Well, what I was told was municipalities really needed three things. The property tax in municipalities, which is their primary revenue source, is not responsive to growth. So even though we're now in a recession now, we are still expecting growth in a number of our urban areas in Alberta. Not as fast a growth, but we're still expecting growth. And they really do tell me that property tax is not responsive enough to growth. They have to build things and provide services on a municipal level. They cannot keep ahead of it and have an increasing operation gap. So they needed something that would respond to growth, that the city would be able to control how the money was spent, and that it would be predictable to them. And thus, we have the revenue sharing that is laid out in Bill 204. Specifically, to take a portion of the provincial income tax, which includes personal income tax and corporate income tax, and it's a small amount, 2.5%, set it aside in a separate account, which would be created by Cabinet within the next sitting of after this bill passes. And then the money from there would flow back out to the municipalities for operational purposes, not capital, not infrastructure. This legislation is based on the Manitoba model, which has been up and running for some time. I believe that their percentage is currently 4%, and there was some talk about how they wanted to increase it to 6%. We have a larger population base, and I think the 2.5% that I'm asking for here is quite reasonable. The idea behind this is it is for operational spending, as I said, that it's an unconditional grant. There's no strings attached. The province can't tell the municipalities how to spend it. It goes to them and they decide on a local basis how they would be spending the money. And it is for operating money. I'll repeat that again, not for capital. There are other grant programs in place. And also that the entire procedure and process would be examined and reviewed in 1 year. So I did quite a bit of talking. I got a lot of correspondence back and a fair amount of support and some questions from municipalities. And I didn't get formal responses from AUMA or AAMD&C, but in this province I wouldn't have expected that either. I'm looking forward to a healthy debate on this. I think a number of members in here come from a municipal background and understand exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about funding gaps. And I hope that the members will be supportive of my suggestions here. But I hope that there's a respectful and energetic debate more than anything. We need a wider discussion of the relationship between the province and the municipalities. And given that 2/3 of us live in those urban areas, this is an important part of that discussion. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.